So after going 77 Tombs of a Massacre dry, I finally got my first item, the Fang worth 500 million GP.
It's gone down in price a little bit.
Oh, a 300 million GP item.
A bit more than that.
Really? So I got a 200 million GP item. Still not bad.
Well, actually...
So apparently the Fang is now 166 million GP, and the Rapier is 107 million GP, even though the Fang was amazing at Tombs of a Massacre and shaved 3 to 4 minutes off every single run I did, and seems to be way OP at everything I use it for, compared to the Rapier. If you don't know about the Fang, it has a special ability which re-rolls the attack again if you would have missed the first time. So imagine if you attack twice and either of those attacks hit, then the Fang takes that as a successful hit and rolls a random number between its minimum and maximum hit like any other weapon. So if you went to a boss and successfully hit 75% of the time with a Rapier, 25% of the time you're going to be hitting zeros. But with the Fang, the 25% of time you would have missed, there is now a 75% chance, since that is your accuracy, that you will instead be a hit on the second roll. That instead gives you an overall accuracy of 93% on some of the hardest creatures in the game. It essentially takes your long, painful attack grind and throws it in the bin. In theory, the Fang should be better against bosses with a high defense, as many times when the Rapier hits a 0, the Fang doesn't, but the Rapier should be better against low defense creatures such as Training Slayer and low defense bosses where you rarely hit zeros. But, having used the Fang and it feeling very good against absolutely everything, I wanted to test it out. I'm going to put the Fang and the Rapier head to head against the Giant Mole, which has a defense level of 60 for stab attacks, and that's one of the lowest for any boss. The Rapier should be better here, but I'm going to keep going to higher defense level bosses until I find the level where the Fang becomes the best. I've got exactly the same setups for both items, and I won't be using the Fang's special attack since the Rapier doesn't have one, and if you wanted to use a spec anywhere, you would probably use a better spec weapon than the Fang anyway. So I've just killed the Giant Mole for 30 minutes with both weapons. The Rapier got 26 kills and the Fang got more kills, not by a little bit, look at this, it actually got 37 kills. I mean, I was not expecting that, to be perfectly honest. The Mole is literally one of the lowest defense bosses in the entire game, apart from a couple that you mage anyway in the likes of Obor, where you have to farm keys, or in the Evil Chicken, if anyone actually kills that thing. So going up in defense levels now is pretty pointless, since we know the more zeros you hit, the better DPS the Fang is over the Rapier, so I guess we're going to have to go low until we find out when the Rapier becomes the best weapon again. Right, the next creature I've selected only has a 30 stab defense and a decent amount of hit points. Same gear again, and surely, with only half the defense the Giant Mole has and just a standard Slayer creature, the Rapier will own. 15 minutes with the Rapier got me 30 kills, and in the same time, with the same gear, the Fang got 31. In fact, I would have been 32 or 33, but my guy AFK'd in the middle for about 40 seconds while I made a drink and managed to not get attacked by anything. But other than that, it still won regardless, and yeah. The weapon created just for bosses is apparently actually better for the average Slayer creature too. So this video has gone completely sideways and not the way I expected, but I really have to test something out out of pure curiosity. A creature with absolutely no defense whatsoever. You do occasionally hit zeros on a creature with no defense, but it isn't very often. In fact, the next creature I've selected is where low levels sometimes go to AFK train, because you don't even need a decent stats to hit them. Demons notoriously have poor defense, so I'm going to kill black demons whose defensive stats are non-existent to finally find a use for my 107 million GP Rapier. It has to win this, doesn't it? After pretty much the exact same time, both weapons killed 48 black demons each. I mean, whoever did the calculations, that was meant to mean the Fang was only going to be decently effective on low levels, but excels on things with a high defense, should probably go over them again. For an extra 60 million, what is the point in a rapier anymore? It's probably only the best in slot against creatures with a negative defense now, which is what? Cows? Anyway, if that is the Fang's weak point, let's test out what it's actually meant to do. Bandos is very good money right now, about 4.6 million GP per hour if you can kill 20 per hour. People say that's difficult to achieve without the best gear though, as kiting him around the room and ranging tends to be slow kills, but you take minimal damage, and meleeing him means you run out of supplies after just a few kills. So it'll be interesting to see how the Fang is here. Bandos has 90 defense, which isn't massively higher than the giant mole that had 60. 7 kills in 16 minutes, pretty decent for a test run. If I brought Blood Barrage for the minions to heal up and possibly a defender over his shield, and just a few things like that to tweak the setup and make it perfect, I reckon around 10 kills is possible per run. Which, with the time to bank and get the kill count, seems like it will be around 20 kills per hour. Another thing I wanted to look at is this thing is so incredibly accurate, can you use it at places like barrows instead of bringing switches? All of the melee barrow brothers have a stab defense in the 200s, a lot higher than anything I've tested so far. I've completed 4 runs, one with just a Fang and the other using the correct switches for the bosses, using a Rapier, Blowpipe and Trident. 4 runs with the switches took around 17 minutes and 21 seconds, and 4 runs with the Fang took just 14 minutes and 17 seconds. There's a little bit of RNG in this one mainly because of where the door placement is, but even still, the Fang was clearly quicker overall. Mainly by being okay at the melee brothers and tearing through Aram and Kirill. So this means that not only is the Fang the best stab weapon by far now, it's actually sometimes better than the other weapons even when a boss is weak to it, but not to stab. I tested the accuracy against many other bosses and it seems to work as follows. A lot of bosses have defensive stats in the double digits or low 100s, but are weaker to a particular style. However, even with 110 stab defense, the Fang hits around 70% of the time and is incredibly accurate with anything lower, so is generally more DPS than even the weapon that was meant to be used. There are obviously exceptions, such as the Twisted Bow on a boss with a high magic level, but the extreme accuracy seems to be a bit of a mistake on Jagex's part with regards to the usefulness of other weapons. In fact, the only time the Fang struggles is in the group of bosses whose stab defense is in the 200s that are extremely weak to another style, because you only hit around 50% of the time at that level. For example, I couldn't kill 3 Dagonoth Kings before another one respawned, which you can do with switches, and I hit Vetian around half of the time compared to 80 to 90% of the time you normally hit with Varax since it's weak to crush. It's common for items to fall in price after release, but after just a few weeks the Fang is almost as cheap as the Rapier, which has been out for years, even though it is much better. The only reason I can think for this is that the downside to the Fang is it's essentially quite boring. It's a tick slower and can't hit as high. It does consistent good damage, but you never completely rip through something like you do with a Rapier with some good RNG. Using a Rapier is like driving the scenic route even though it takes longer and it's stop-start. It's a bit more fun compared to using the Fang and driving down the motorway constantly at the same speed. Even still, call me boring, but I know which weapon I will use. However, for all those that decide on the Rapier, don't worry, I finally managed to find something just for you where it's still the best in slot weapon in the entire game.